Hey Titans, this should be an easy and quick tutorial that's going to start you on how to do your student digital portfolio or your DP project. So that you're going to start this project in Photoshop, even though it is not a Photoshop project. But actually, before we even go to Photoshop, you have to go over to the internet to defont.com or one of the other font sites that I give you. I clicked the subgroup sci-fi. You should check out these different groups because they'll have the things that you want. Like if you're into horror movies, you can pick that and so on. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and pick one that I like. I'm going to go with Planet Cosmos. You're going to get a total of 5 fonts. When you're choosing your fonts, make sure you're picking solid ones and not outlines. So this would be something to avoid. You don't really want outlines. You want the most of the inside to be black. This would be okay. Okay, but something that's empty like this is not the best plan for this project. So I'm going to click download here, and I would search for 4 more while you're here. And then you're going to go to your Finder and your Downloads folder. So in your Downloads folder, you hopefully have all of your different zip files that come up here. You're going to look for obviously the ones that you've just downloaded. So you could go here and it should have a string of all 5. You would open up the zip file. It's going to create a folder of that font. And you're going to double click that and look for the TTF file or a file that looks like this. It's usually TTF. You're going to double click that and then you're just going to install the font. Okay. Once that happens, you might have to select this or click the select all fonts button and click install checked, and that's going to put it in your Photoshop. You could also click it over here if you had them all lined up. You could just click it instead of going to your Finder, just so you know. I'm going to X all this out. Then when we go to Photoshop, it should be there under our text tools. So the first thing you're going to do is when you're in Photoshop is go to File New like always. This is the first assignment that I'm actually not going to see the Photoshop project of, so you don't have to use an official name. I'm just going to call this Title Slide 1. You could call them whatever you want because I'm never going to see this file. I'm only going to see it in your final piece, and therefore I'm not going to see the names. You want these numbers to be the same as they always are. Press OK. Alright, so this is my page. I'm going to start by clicking somewhere to get my text tool started. I'm going to make sure the size is nice and big, maybe even bigger, and just so you know, you can also type numbers into here. So different fonts are actually sometimes different sizes, so you might want to go up to 100 to get a nice size. You could change your color here. I'm going to go ahead and change it to let's go with blue right now. We'll do school colors for this one. And you want to change this obviously to whatever the name of your font was, which I already forgot. I think it began with a P. So Planet something. There it is. Alright, so now for my first slide, I'm just going to type in digital portfolio. Once you have this written in, you could use your move tool to move it to the position that you want. And then I'm going to ask you to go through a couple different things to make this look impressive. The first thing that I'm going to do is highlight it with my text tool, go over to my text warp, and use some of the things that I learned back in the image from text project where I used nothing but words to create an image. I'm going to bend my text. I might change the horizontal distortion so it looks a little bit like Indiana Jones or Superman's font. So those are things you can do. Don't worry if it goes off the page. You could just press OK and then move your font to where you want it to be. By the way, obviously I don't care if you do the exact same warps as I do, or if you find something else that you like, that's fine too. Obviously, I prefer things to look a little bit different for everybody, but I just want you to try and use that text warp because it always makes it look like a better product. The next thing I would do is I might duplicate it by pressing the Alt button and duplicating it up a little bit, and then going back to my font tool and sliding over one of them and making it black. This will make a nice little drop shadow kind of effect. I'm going to put the black in the back though, so I moved my layers here. Alright, so that's a good start to our logo. It already is starting to look impressive. Obviously, you still want it to be readable, so I'm going to try and adjust it there. It's pretty readable there. I might decrease my bend, but now if I do it, I have to do it to both. Alright, so the next thing I want you to work on, other than the text warp, is your layer styles, which are here. These are the effects that we learned way back in ZooSigns and also in Texture Collage and several other projects since then. So consider adding another drop shadow to the top layer. You could also change that drop shadow by changing the distance. So now it looks like those letters are 3D and they have a drop shadow, which is kind of cool. But you could, again, use whatever you want. Bevel, to me, makes it look a little bit more 3D. If I play with this a little bit, the size, and that is about what I'm looking for. You might also use a stroke if you need to make it stand out more from the background, which right now is white, but we're about to change that. So once you have some layer styles on there, you'll be able to press OK. And then we're going to go to our background. This is the last step. We're going to go to our paint bucket, or if you already have it out, your gradient tool. But if you don't, you just hold down the paint bucket until the gradient tool shows up. We could change our colors here. I'm going to go with oranges, being that I said I was going to do school colors this time. And we'll stick with white as the other color. But you could change that too by double clicking. Actually, I'll make it a lighter orange. Okay. So now I have these up here, and you can see that in the gradient area up here in the options bar, my fade changed. I can use any of these gradients, but if I want to use the one that I made with my colors, that one will be here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Mess with these because these create different effects and they're pretty cool. But I'm going to start my gradient in the middle and go out. You could also do the opposite of this for a completely different effect. But that's pretty much the finished version of this specific title slide. Now you're going to create each of you are going to create 4 more title slides. For some of you, you're going to choose to divide your projects in your portfolio by grade, in which case the next slide would say grade 5, and the next slide would be grade 6, and the next slide would be grade 7, and the last slide would be grade 8, and each of them would be done in different fonts using different effects to make it look cool or interesting. Alternatively, you might choose to divide up your projects by program, in which case your second slide would say Photoshop, and your third would say Illustrator, and your fourth would say SketchUp, and your last would say Final Cut. So you're going to create these 5 slides as 5 separate documents. So I'm going to file save this. I already filed save this to let it know that I was finished, but I'm also going to save as, and I'm going to change this to a JPEG. All of your slides that you're going to put in your final product are going to be JPEG's format. So we don't have to change the title or anything, but just change that, and I would put it on your desktop so you can see it, and make sure that you pick the JPEG when you're bringing it into Final Cut or Prezi, otherwise it might not work. And sometimes I go back and improve my work after the fact. So I added my name to this. You could see that I added some effects on my name. I also added 2 of the filters found in Photoshop's filters right here. And lastly, like we did on ZooSigns, and lastly, I added effects to this layer by double clicking it, and then a thing will come up because it's the background. I pressed OK, and then I added those effects, which was just a bevel emboss in this case, which is what made this outer frame. So now I would go to File, New, and I would make, my title slide 2. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave positive feedback, and when you're done making your title slides, check out the next video that'll show you how to put it together in either Prezi or Final Cut based on your own choice. Keep it up, Titans.